The air in the bridal shop was thick with the scent of lace and dreams. Sarah stood on a small platform, turning slowly, the heavy satin of her wedding dress swirling around her. It was a week until her big day, and everything felt perfect. Her best friend, Mariah, laughed, snapping photos with her phone, telling Sarah she looked like a princess. Sarah's mother, Brenda, stood close by, her eyes shining with tears of pride. She fussed with the dress's long train, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles. "Oh, Sarah, you look absolutely perfect," Brenda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "David is going to cry when he sees you walk down that aisle. He won't be able to hold back the tears." Sarah felt a warm blush spread across her cheeks. She turned slightly, admiring how the delicate lace sleeves draped over her arms and how the dress flowed behind her like a soft white cloud. "Do you really think so, Mom?" she asked, a small happy flutter in her chest. "Think so? I know so," Mariah chimed in, stepping closer to give Sarah a quick, excited hug. "You are just glowing, S. Truly, you look like you stepped right out of a fairy tale." Mariah's words made Sarah smile wider. She felt it too, a bright, warm glow inside her. Everything felt right in that moment. The beautiful dress, the happy sounds of her mom and best friend, the strong feeling of excitement bubbling up. It was all real. It was all happening. Just 7 more days until she would marry David, the man she loved. The wedding plans were all finished. The guest list was set in stone with every name carefully checked off. The fancy hotel ballroom, chosen for the reception, was ready and waiting. The wedding cake, a towering masterpiece with 3 different flavors, had been tasted and approved, all sweet and perfect. Even the vows, the special promises she would make to David, were written, tucked safely away in her mind. Everything, absolutely everything, was in its place. Then, a small, sudden buzz vibrated in her hand. Her phone. Sarah looked down, expecting a sweet, loving message from David. Maybe he would text her about their dinner plans for later that night, or perhaps just to say how much he missed her already. Her heart warmed just thinking about it. But the words on the screen were not sweet. They were cold and sharp, like tiny knives stabbing at her happy bubble. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." That was all it said. Just those few terrible words. No explanation, no more messages, no follow-up call. Nothing. Sarah froze. Her fingers went numb around her phone. The happy smile on her face slowly faded. Mariah, ever watchful, noticed first. Her smile softened. "S? What is it? You look like you just saw a ghost." Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't. Her eyes were glued to the screen, reading the message over and over again, as if the words would change, as if they would somehow magically turn into something else. But they didn't. They stayed the same, cutting deeper each time she read them. Her hand, still holding the phone, began to shake, a tiny tremor that quickly grew into a violent tremble. She felt suddenly too tall on the platform. She stepped down, her heels clicking too loudly, too harshly on the polished floor. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden, heavy silence of the bridal shop. Her mother, Brenda, frowned, her face clouded with confusion. "Emily, what happened? What's wrong, honey?" Sarah didn't say anything. Still, her mind was a blank, icy space. She lifted the phone again, her trembling fingers trying to tap David's name. She tried calling him. It rang once, a long, lonely ring, then went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. She sent a message, her thumbs fumbling over the keyboard. "What's going on? Please call me. Tell me what's happening." Still no reply.
A cold panic, slow and creeping, started to spread through her, like icy water filling her veins. But even as panic swelled, she stayed still, frozen in place. It was as if her mind couldn't catch up with what had just happened, couldn't understand the impossible words she had just read. Mariah, seeing the fear in Sarah's eyes, gently touched her arm. "Sarah, please, talk to me. You're scaring me." Sarah didn't move. She just stared blankly ahead, still dressed in the beautiful, now mocking wedding gown. Her legs felt weak. She slowly sat down on the fitting room bench, the satin dress pooling around her feet. Her mother stood nearby, asking questions, her voice a worried murmur. But Sarah couldn't hear them. Everything felt far away, muffled, like sounds coming from underwater. She looked down at her hands, still clutching her phone tightly. She blinked hard, once, twice, a third time, but the tears wouldn't fall, not yet. Her eyes felt dry and burning, as if they had forgotten how to cry. The wedding. It was 1 week away. 1 single week. Guests had already booked their flights from all over the country, some even from other countries. Plane tickets, hotel rooms, all paid for. Every last detail had been planned, every expense covered, every promise made. And now? Now it was all gone, just like that. She slowly pulled off one long white glove, then the other. Her fingers felt strangely cold, disconnected from her body. She sat on the floor, sliding down from the bench, letting the vast expanse of the dress pool around her like soft white waves on a silent, empty shore. There were no screams, no wild sobs, no angry cries, just a quiet, heavy stillness. The kind of stillness that happens when your entire world falls apart, not with a bang, but with a single, brutal sentence. Sarah is a 29-year-old public school teacher. Her life had always been simple and steady, like a quiet river flowing calmly through a green valley. She taught 3rd grade at the same school where she had once been a student herself, a small brick building filled with the laughter of children. She loved her job. She rented a small, cozy apartment, drove a sensible, used car that always got her where she needed to go, and spent most of her weekends doing quiet things, grading stacks of papers, carefully reading books in peaceful cafes, or taking long walks in the park. Her young students adored her, their faces lighting up when she entered the classroom. The other teachers respected her for her hard work and kind nature. She didn't make a lot of money, not by a long shot, but she was proud of the life she had carefully built for herself, brick by quiet brick. It was her own, and it was enough. Then David came along, and everything changed. He walked into her simple, steady life like a brightly colored parade, full of loud music and flashing lights. David was confident, always sure of himself, with a quick, easy laugh that made others smile. He was charming, always knowing the right thing to say to make someone feel special. He worked in finance, a world far removed from her classroom, and he made good money, much more than she ever imagined. He dressed well, his clothes always sharp and expensive, and he talked smoothly, his words flowing easily, making everything sound exciting and possible. From their very first date, Sarah felt like she was living in a movie. It was all a whirlwind of romance. Unexpected bouquets of fresh flowers showing up at her door, spontaneous weekend trips to charming bed and breakfasts, long whispered walks under the stars, and candlelit dinners in fancy restaurants. It all happened so fast, a blur of happiness and new experiences. She was swept off her feet. Her mother, Brenda, was beyond thrilled. Brenda had always cared deeply about what other people thought, about appearances and what the neighbors might say. She wanted everything in their family to look just right, to be seen as perfect. A perfect house, a perfect daughter, and, of course, a perfect wedding. David, with his respected family name, his well-paying job, and his picture-perfect looks, seemed like the ultimate prize. To Brenda, David was the trophy Sarah had finally won, proof that her daughter had made all the right choices. Sarah's father didn't say much about David. He was a quiet man, preferring to spend his time fixing old radios in his workshop or watching the news in silence. But he had a special way of noticing things that others missed, little details that hinted at bigger truths. Sometimes Sarah would catch him looking at David with a thoughtful, almost questioning expression, his brow furrowed just a little. But he never said anything directly against David, never spoke his worries aloud. Sarah's younger brother, Daniel, was different. He was bolder, more outspoken. He didn't trust David from the very start. "There's just something off about that guy, Sarah," he had told her once, his voice serious. "I can't quite put my finger on it, but something feels wrong." But Daniel didn't push it. He saw how happy Sarah seemed, how bright her eyes were when she talked about David, and he stayed quiet, not wanting to cause problems or ruin her happiness. He swallowed his doubts for her. Looking back now, in the chilling aftermath of David's text, Sarah started to see all the little signs she had missed, or perhaps chosen to ignore. They were like tiny cracks in a beautiful painting, cracks she had dismissed as nothing. The way David would quickly change the subject when she asked about his past, almost as if he was hiding something. How he never introduced her to his closest friends, always saying they were too busy or out of town. There were times, too, when he would make small comments that stung, little jokes that felt sharp, but then he would always smile, charmingly, making her feel like she was the one overthinking, that she was being too sensitive. "Oh, Sarah, don't be so dramatic," he'd say, pulling her into a hug, and she'd believe him. She always had. Still, despite these small, unsettling moments, Sarah believed in the dream they were building. She believed in love, in the kind of forever love you read about in books. And most of all, she believed in him. When David finally proposed, it felt like her whole life had finally clicked into place. The diamond ring was beautiful, sparkling on her finger. The moment was perfect. A sunset picnic by the lake, soft words, and David on one knee. Her family cheered, her friends cried tears of joy. Brenda, of course, immediately took over the wedding planning. She dove into choosing flowers, tasting endless menu options, and crafting intricate guest lists like it was her own royal event. Sarah sometimes felt like a guest at her own engagement party, a bystander to her own future. Her mother took complete control, turning every single choice into a grand statement, a public declaration. The designer dress, the custom-made invitations, the precise seating chart. Sarah had wanted a small, simple wedding, something quiet and meaningful, focused on their love. But Brenda had waved away her ideas with a dismissive hand. "This isn't just about you, Sarah," her mother had insisted, her voice firm. "This is about our family. Everyone is watching us. Everyone expects perfection." In their small town, people remembered everything. Whispers and gossip lasted for years, passed from one front porch to another. Sarah had always been the good one. The daughter who stayed close to home, never caused trouble, never failed at anything important. While her younger brother, Daniel, had struggled in school and often clashed with their parents, Sarah had done everything right. Excelled in college, built a respectable career, and now was engaged to a perfect man. She was supposed to be the one who made it, the shining example for the family. And now, just 1 week before the wedding, it was all gone. David had walked away with one short, cold message and no explanation. The guests were already booking flights. The church had been paid for months ago. Her beautiful dress had been chosen and fitted. The dream her mother had built, brick by perfect brick, was crumbling fast. And people, she knew, were already starting to talk. The silence that followed David's message was louder than anything Sarah had ever felt in her life. It roared in her ears, a deafening echo of emptiness. She didn't know what to say to her friends, who had been so excited for her. She didn't know how to face her students, who had drawn her little wedding pictures. She couldn't imagine talking to her coworkers, who had thrown her a surprise bridal shower just weeks ago. But worst of all, much worse, was the look on her mother's face. It wasn't sadness that Sarah saw in Brenda's eyes. It was disappointment. Deep, crushing disappointment, as if Sarah had let the entire family down, as if she had failed at the most important thing. And now, in this small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, Sarah had to face not just the pain of a broken heart, but the crushing shame of a broken image. She had spent her entire life trying to be the one who got everything right. Now, with everything shattered, she didn't know who she was anymore. A few days crawled by, each one heavier and colder than the last. Sarah knew she had to face David. She needed answers. She needed to understand. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, a place where they hoped they wouldn't be recognized. She still held on to a tiny flicker of hope, a desperate thought that maybe, just maybe, there had been a mistake. Maybe he was just scared. Maybe they could talk things through, fix whatever had gone wrong. But when David spoke, his voice was flat and cold, like ice. His eyes, usually so warm and full of laughter, didn't meet hers. They darted around the cafe, anywhere but at her face. "I don't love you anymore," he said, the words falling from his lips like they meant nothing, like he was talking about the weather. Sarah stared at him, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. It felt like someone had punched her hard right in the chest. "Then why?" she managed to ask, her voice barely a whisper, soft and shaking. "Why did you propose to me? Why did you make all those plans, all those promises?" David shrugged, a casual, uncaring movement. "I don't know," he mumbled, still not looking at her. "It felt like the right thing at the time. Everyone expected it, you know. Your mom, my parents. It just felt like what I was supposed to do." "That's not a reason, David." Sarah's voice was a little louder now, laced with raw pain. "That's not a reason to ask someone to spend their life with you. That's not a reason to plan a whole wedding."
He didn't answer. He just sat there, silent, his gaze fixed somewhere over her shoulder. There was no fight, no angry words exchanged, no tears from him. Just a long, heavy silence that felt like it would suffocate her. Sarah finally stood up. She felt hollow, as if something vital inside her had cracked wide open and all her happiness had spilled out. The worst part, the truly agonizing part, was that he didn't even seem sad. Not even a little. He was just done. That night, lying curled on the couch in her silent apartment, Sarah's hand, still shaking, reached for her phone. She felt drawn to it, even though she dreaded what she might find. Her heart stopped, literally froze in her chest when she saw a photo on social media. It was posted by someone she barely knew, a mutual acquaintance. David was in the photo, smiling, broadly, almost glowing. He was in Napa Valley, a place they had talked about visiting for their honeymoon. And beside him, her arm linked through his, was a woman. The woman was Rachel, David's coworker. Rachel, who had been at their engagement party. Rachel, who had smiled at Sarah, complimented her dress, and even given her a gift. The caption under the photo screamed at her, a brutal, public declaration. No more pretending. Finally free. Sarah's hands began to shake violently, so much so that she almost dropped the phone. She read the caption again and again and again. It wasn't just a breakup anymore. It wasn't just a sudden change of heart. This was betrayal. Deep, public, humiliating. Her phone started buzzing almost immediately. Messages flooded in. Friends asking questions, curious, shocked. Some trying to be gentle, others just plain nosy. Some well-meaning friends even sent her the photo, as if she hadn't already seen it, as if the pain wasn't already a raw wound in her soul. The news spread like wildfire in their small town. Everyone knew everyone else's business, and this was the biggest news in years. By morning, Sarah knew, everyone would know. At home, her mother, Brenda, called. Sarah dreaded answering, but she did. Brenda's voice was sharp, not worried about Sarah, but about the scandal. She didn't ask if Sarah was okay. She didn't talk about David cheating. Instead, her voice was cold, accusing. "Sarah, what did you do wrong?
Why couldn't you keep him interested? Why did you let this happen? Sarah felt a surge of cold fury. She didn't answer. She just hung up the phone, her finger pressing the end call button hard. Then, with a fierce, almost desperate movement, she shut off her phone completely. The silence that followed was a small comfort. She walked to her front door and turned the lock, then the deadbolt, as if she could lock out the world, lock out the shame and the pain. She stopped going out. She just stayed inside, a prisoner of her own apartment. Shame and anger swirled inside her, a dark, churning storm. She wanted to scream until her throat was raw. She wanted to disappear, to vanish from the face of the earth. Most of all, she wanted to go back in time, back to that moment in the bridal shop, and undo everything. Undo the dress, undo the dream, undo the pain. Later that night, as she slowly, numbly began to clean up the remains of the wedding in her living room, the stacks of invitation samples, the small boxes of wedding favors, the discarded magazines with smiling brides, she found a small, folded piece of paper. It was from her vow draft, the part she had worked on late one night, surrounded by moonlight, when she still believed. When she still believed in love, in David, in their future.
She unfolded the paper. In her neat, looping handwriting, it read, "You are the safest place I have ever known." Sarah stared at the words. The irony, the bitter twist, was a physical ache. She stared at them for a long, long time. Then, with slow, deliberate movements, she folded the paper again, carefully, precisely. She walked to her desk, opened a drawer, and placed it inside, pushing it to the very back. Her hands were still now, completely steady. Her face was unreadable, a mask of quiet resolve. Something inside her had changed, shifted, hardened. She wasn't sure what would happen next, or what this new, harder part of her meant. But she knew one thing, with a cold, clear certainty. She would never beg for love again. Not from David, not from anyone. Sarah started getting strange messages on her phone in the days that followed. At first, she didn't know who they were from. There was no name, no number, just blurry screenshots. Her stomach tightened with dread each time a new one appeared. One by one, she opened them, and her heart sank deeper with each click. They were messages between David and another woman. The timestamp on the messages showed they were old, dated months ago, long before David had even proposed to her. Some of the messages were just flirty, little jokes and compliments, but others were more serious, talking about plans, about meeting up, about feelings. All of them, every single one, showed that David had been involved with someone else, even while he was planning a wedding with her. Even while he was smiling for family photos, pretending to be the perfect fiancé. The brutal truth hit her like a physical blow. He had someone else in his heart the whole time, not her. Sarah felt sick to her stomach, hurt, angry, but mostly she felt foolish. So incredibly, deeply fooled. She had trusted him completely. She had believed every single one of his lies, swallowed them whole like bitter medicine. Now she saw it all so clearly. He had played her. At home, things weren't any better. Her mother, Brenda, kept trying to control the situation as if it were just another social event that needed managing. "We can still fix this, Sarah," Brenda insisted, her voice tight with urgency. "Just tell everyone it was a mutual decision. Say you both decided to call off the wedding. People will stop talking. The gossip will die down." Sarah looked at her mother in disbelief, her eyes wide. "You want me to lie, Mom? You want me to pretend we broke up nicely so people don't think he left me?" Brenda sighed, a long, exasperated sound. "It's not lying, Sarah. It's protecting your image.
You don't want people to think he left you for another woman, do you? That looks terrible." "I don't care what they think," Sarah snapped, her voice firm, surprising even herself with its strength. "Well, I do," Brenda shot back, her face hardening. "Everyone was looking forward to this wedding, Sarah. This was supposed to be a triumph." Sarah stared at her mother, a cold, painful realization dawning on her. "You didn't care if I was happy, did you?" she said, her voice quiet but sharp. "You just wanted the wedding, the perfect image, the perfect daughter." Brenda's face turned cold, a mask of anger and frustration. Then, with a sudden, sharp movement, she raised her hand. Before Sarah could even blink, her mother's hand connected with her cheek, a stinging slap that echoed in the silent room. For a moment, everything froze. Sarah felt the immediate, burning sting on her cheek, a sharp pain that quickly dulled into a throb. But she didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she looked her mother straight in the eyes, her gaze calm and clear, betraying none of the pain or shock she felt. Then, slowly, deliberately, she turned around and walked out of the house. She didn't look back. Later that week, her younger brother Daniel came to visit. He found her sitting on her back porch, staring out at the small, overgrown garden. They sat there for a long time, not saying much, just listening to the chirping of crickets. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "I didn't want to tell you before," he said, his voice quiet, filled with regret. "I really didn't. I didn't want to hurt you, Sarah. But I saw David with Rachel, months ago, at that new bar downtown." Sarah didn't react right away. She just nodded slowly, her eyes still on the garden. "And?" she prompted, her voice flat. "They were kissing," Daniel finished, his voice barely a whisper. "They were really, really kissing, like they were together." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, a wave of familiar pain washing over her. She had suspected, but hearing it from Daniel made it real, undeniable. "Why didn't you tell me, Daniel?" she asked, her voice tight with a mix of hurt and sadness. He sighed, a heavy sound. "I didn't know how. You were so happy, Sarah. I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just a friendly hug, or I saw it wrong in the dim light. I didn't want to mess things up, to make you doubt him without proof." He paused. "I really thought I was wrong." "You weren't," Sarah said quietly, finally looking at him. Her eyes were still dry, but held a deep, settled sadness. "You were right all along." A few days later, David sent her another message. It was short, hesitant, almost like he was testing the waters. It said, "We can still talk if you want, about everything." Sarah stared at the message for a long, long time. Her fingers hovered over the screen, feeling the phantom weight of her phone. She thought about all the pain, all the lies, all the public humiliation. She thought about her mother's disappointment. She thought about the image she had tried so hard to maintain. Then, without a single word, without a moment of hesitation, she found David's contact in her phone. She blocked his number. She felt no need to scream, no need to fight him, no need to argue. The anger was still there, a hot coal deep inside her, but it was a quiet anger now, a controlled burn. Something inside her had shifted, decisively. She was done with the drama, done with the chase, done with the pain he had caused. That night, for the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a different kind of energy stir within her. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger, not really. It was something else, a quiet resolve. She opened her laptop. She didn't start scrolling through social media or looking at old photos. Instead, she opened a new document. She started writing a list. It wasn't a to-do list for the week. It wasn't a grocery list. It was a plan. It wasn't a plan for revenge in the way most people thought of it, not about hurting David directly or making his life miserable. It was a plan for something quieter, something private, something deeply, fiercely for herself. She didn't know what the future would look like yet. She didn't know how she would recover or what her life would become. But she knew one thing. She was no longer waiting for someone else to save her.